Throughout the book, I've put in small vignettes of various people who have been influential in the religious traditions of the 20th century. And so I talk about Gandhi and Edward Konza and Khatib, who is a major Islamic figure. He's not well known in the West. People haven't read his works. And usually he's ignored in universities because he's regarded as one of those he's a bit of an extremist, and we're not going to talk about him. But the fact is that if you go to any Muslim country, or even in the West, if you go to Muslim bookstores and things, one finds that he is probably the most popular Muslim writer today. And he did a major commentary on the Quran. He wrote a very influential book, a very short book called Milestones, where he lays out his view of Islam. And he was part of the Muslim Brotherhood in Egypt. He was executed eventually by President Nasser, and he played a key role in the revitalization of modern Islam. And his works are still studied and are influential. And this is the reason it's in the book. I mean, I think it's a big mistake to say, you know, this person isn't important if people in a religious tradition say they're important. And very often this goes on. It's not just with the treatment of Islam, it's the treatment of Christianity and all sorts of other things. You find that usually popular writers, popular theologians of any religious tradition are dismissed by the scholars. And yet very often it's the popular people who have the most influence on the masses and who motivate people to act in particular ways. And Khatib is particularly influential in the reformulation of modern Islam. He came to North America as a young man. He just didn't like it. I mean, he found North America totally corrupt. This was in the 50s, and he just thought America was such a corrupt and decadent society that he couldn't stand it. And when he went back to Egypt, he then devoted himself to revitalizing Islamic society. And his influence stretches across the Islamic world. His books have been translated into most languages that Muslims would read, and also into English. There's a major translation of his commentaries on the Quran. And you find them places like the Islamic Foundation in Leicester, which is a major British Islamic organization. They promote his works. They promote them through one of their bookstores. If you go to their main bookstore on the web, they've now taken him off because he's regarded as a little bit unsavory by some people because he's very blunt. But on the other hand, when I say he's blunt, what he presents is Islam as most Muslims outside of the West, outside of Europe and North America, the way most Muslims would understand Islam. And therefore, he's not afraid of talking about things like jihad in terms of holy war. He's not afraid of saying that there are things implied by Islamic law that ought to be applied, Sharia ought to be applied, and things like this, which a lot of Western people, Western scholars, don't like to hear, and a lot of Muslims in the West don't like to hear. There are many branches of Islam. One's got to be very, very careful. And in some ways, people might say, well, he distorts Islam. But his distortion of Islam is one that a lot of people, if it is a distortion, that a lot of Muslims would agree with throughout the world, and a lot of Muslims in the West would agree with. There may be fine points, you know, people don't like some of the things that are said, but nevertheless, I think he's a very significant figure and has to be taken seriously if we want to understand the living religion and not just a textbook religion that most people like to go in for. And this applies not simply to Islam, but to Christianity. If you read what most scholars write about Christianity, it bears no relationship to what happens in a church. And what people write about Islam bears very little relationship to what Muslims do and think. And this isn't to reduce Islam to one particular thing. There are many branches and many different kinds of Islam, just as there are many branches and different kinds of Christianity. And those are things that we've got to learn about and know about. And so that's why I included him in my book.